Very, very, very cool. Listen, I'm just going to take a few minutes with you this morning before I turn it back over to Marianne and share with you a couple of thoughts on growth. And in the last couple of months, we've talked about optimization, yes?
Yes.
And we've talked about elevating standards. Here's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about the muscles that you're growing here, just like you grow muscles at the gym, right? Who here likes going to the gym, by the way? Who here likes it? Who here finds that after 3, 4, 5, 6 months that they can lift a muscle group significantly heavier than they could 3 or 6 months earlier? Who knows that game? Dude, I love that game. That is my favorite game. That is the game that I love to play, because how many of you have figured out it's more of a mental game than a physical game? It's totally a mental game. Well, take a look for just a moment at what you measure here. In fact, take a look at anything that you measure that stretches you and pushes you. For example, raise your hand if you have a significant other, relationship with someone that you really like in your life. Many of us do. Did you know there's a certain number of minutes every day that relationship needs for that to be a healthy relationship? Do you guys know what your number is? Do you know what your minutes are? Most people don't have an awareness that there's actually a number of minutes. For example, let's say you spent 8 hours with that person today. Raise your hand if that would be too much time. Well, I'm getting weird looks like, too. That's a lot of time. Like, can you imagine 8 hours every day? You couldn't afford a job. You might not have time to go to the gym. You'd probably default on other really important priorities. So it's not 8 hours. But you tell me, what would happen if this was one of the most important relationships in your life and you only gave them 2 minutes a day? What would happen?
Suffer.
It would suffer until what?
Divorce.
Until it falls apart and you guys separate, because no one wants to be in the most amazing relationship with someone and they only get 2 minutes a day. So it's not 2 minutes and it's not 8 hours. So the question is, what's the right number of minutes? And it's going to look different for every one of you. Now, here's the truth. There is a perfect number of minutes that would equate to satisfaction. To what?
Satisfaction.
And let's just say for a moment that that number of minutes was 95. It's 95 minutes a day. As long as you give that relationship 95 minutes a day, you guys are going to reach a level of satisfaction. Now, by the way, when you think of the love of your life, how many of you really actually just want to label your relationship satisfactory?
No.
Does that sound very exciting?
No.
Nope. And that's because you're riding this edge where you're just going for neither scarcity, which is fear-based, neither abundance, which is love-based. So if 95 is your minutes, what happens if you consistently deliver 90 minutes a day?
You will be satisfied.
95 is satisfactory, but if you're delivering 90 minutes on average, how's that relationship gonna feel?
Not great. Scarce.
How many of you are gonna feel like it's just, I don't know, it's weird. It's just like we're not connecting. It's like there's always something just missing a little bit. How many of you think it might be described that way?
Yep.
If you only give it 70 minutes, how do you think it'll be described?
Bad. Worse, I guess.
Oh man, I don't know. We're just, I don't know. It's just not clicking. It's like, no, you're not getting enough minutes, meaningful minutes. But tell me what happens if you're at 110 minutes a day and 95 minutes is the break from scarcity to abundance. What happens when you're 15 minutes on average every day over satisfaction? What would happen?
Just right.
You're gonna feel good. You're gonna feel like, oh yeah, especially if your minutes count. Like, I'm not talking about like doing something lame like watching TV together and holding hands. Like going and doing something where you're both conscious, you're both with it, you're doing something that you would classify as meaningful. If you're giving more time than that needs for satisfaction, that's gonna put you in abundance. I believe that a person who can be in abundance in their health, their relationships, and their wealth has the opportunity to move from a very unconscious life to a very almost like supernatural life of supernatural results. Like, man, it's like karma is always giving me something really good. But the reality is an abundant person receives more than they need. That's actually what abundance means. And I'm telling you that there's a science to putting yourself in abundance. Well, here's the hard fact of life. If you gave that core relationship all the minutes it needed, and you gave yourself the minutes you needed, or maybe you gave God the minutes God needed, or maybe you gave your muscles the minutes that your muscles needed, your cardio, heart and lungs, the minutes they needed, the healthy type of food that food needed, you gave the active income the minutes it needed, the passive income the minutes it needed. If you gave all the minutes to everything that you needed to be in abundance, you'd have to be a hyper-organized, intentional person. Because most people are only, checking off a couple of boxes a day. It would take an effort to win on all fronts. How many of you would agree? Sure. Which means that you have to have a system for how you're going to have to win on all fronts. Let's talk about what you do here this week. Training abundance is like growing a muscle. For example, out of curiosity, who knows their average number of dials a day? Raise your hand if you know your average number of dials a day. If your hand isn't up, you're not measuring what matters, and I'm totally confused how you wouldn't know that number. So I should see every hand up. Like, if you don't know that, that would be weird to me, and it should be weird to you, and we need to actually have that conversation first. What is your average number of dials a day? What's yours?
Last week it was 385. Last 4 weeks it's...
Yeah, but a day.
Oh, a day.
Not a week. So 385 divided by 5 is going to put you somewhere around, what, 80?
Yeah.
75, 80?
Last week.
What was yours?
140.
140 a day? What's yours?
120.
120? What's yours?
76.
76. What's yours? You should know. What's yours?
13.
What's your? Well, your team leader. What's yours?
I did 20 on Friday. I just started.
Okay, you just started 20 on Friday. Why would I want you to know that metric? Because every one of you has a certain number of dials, and a certain number of dials leads to a certain number of conversations. A certain number of conversations leads to sales conversations. A certain number of sales conversations with a certain closing ratio equals the KPI of a financial result. Who gets me? So in theory, if you said, man, I'm just not making the money that I would want. I'm not making the amount of money that I want yet. I would say, cool, you should go back to dials and do what? Like, let's just say someone wanted to double their income. How many dials more would they need to make?
Double.
They would need to double their dials. And yet, how many of you know that it takes a certain mindset to be okay with pushing that dial number up? How many of you know this? Because there are some people that are going to crack. They're going to hit a number where like, oh, man, I'm doing 80 dials a day. You're saying I have to do 160 dials, Kris? Man, I'm already mentally defeated at that thought. And all you've revealed is normal, mere human weakness. And you have to decide if you're just a mere mortal that deals with normal human weakness, because got news for you, you don't belong in sales. Sales is the kind of game for people that want to push through mere mortal, normal, mental breakdown problems. You have to mentally train yourself to be far more robust with that. You'd have to look at doubling that number and be okay with it and be like, oh, dude, I got that 160, that's a cakewalk. You'd have to be able to program that to make that normal for you 5 months from now. Raise your hand if this is making sense. Sure. Now, here's the reality. To double your income, do you actually need to double your dials?
No.
In the beginning, yes. Why?
Because your skills aren't improving.
Because your skills need to improve, and your skills won't improve until you have more meaningful conversations. You got to dial more. There's a reason why Cody has 13 dials and kills it. There's a reason why Marianne has very limited dials. There's a reason why team leaders dial less. It's because their skills are through the what?
Roof.
Their skills are through the roof. How'd they get there? Once upon a time, Jason Lawson probably sucked on the phone. Jason's like, no, absolutely not. Captain Redbeard never sucked on the phone. Okay, I'm just telling you, everyone sucks before they get good. So the reason why you double your dials if you want to double your income is because you have to put in extra hard work until something different happens. You're going to learn something. Man, if I double my dials, I'm starting to double the conversations. And I'm learning that doubling the conversations is double the work. This is hard. Just like maybe putting in the right number of minutes into a relationship that you want to put into a space of abundance is hard at first, because you're trying to balance that against minutes at the gym and minutes here and minutes everywhere. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So what you do is you start learning, I can't work harder alone. I also have to learn how to work what?
Smarter.
So you start saying, if I get 10 people on the phone today, normally I only have 3 sales conversations, because I define a sales conversation as what?
Pitching
Price.
I have to pitch a product. But what would happen if getting 10 on the phone, I could actually have 6 pitches instead of 3? I would have to learn to be a smoother operator and to ask more meaningful, tough questions. And I'd have to learn how to customize the client's experience so that I could actually step into a sales conversation. In other words, my skills would have to what? My skills would have to increase so I can start working smarter instead of harder. And then you'd say, I'm at an 18% closing ratio. That means I have to get 6 people pitched before I collect money on one of them. By the way, Jason, is that a good closing ratio or a bad closing ratio? 18%. Be honest. High or low?
Low.
It's low. When do you start feeling good?
Well,
No, just say it.
at least 50%.
At least 50%. By the way, I'm just curious. Cody, what closing percentage do you like?
My minimum's 40.
Okay, you like at least 40%. Nick, what's yours? 60%?
Yeah.
You're gonna notice that people who perform and make multiple 6 figures, what they share in common is that their closing ratios are higher. So until your closing ratio is 40 or 50%, I got news for you. You're gonna have to work harder by doing more dials instead of working smarter, because the reality is you're gonna get rewarded not by how much you say, but by saying the right things. So along the game, in the beginning, you want to double your income, double your dials. And then when that starts feeling like a lot of work, you gotta actually get better at converting conversations into sales conversations. And then when you're having more sales conversations, you actually have to figure out how to close a higher percentage, because you're actually paid to close, not talk to humans. You're not paid to dial, you're paid to close. So the number you need to become obsessed with, what's your closing ratio? You're too new. What's your closing ratio for what you do?
65%.
65%. Cody, what's your closing ratio?
45.
45. What's your closing ratio?
37 right now.
You have to know your closing ratio. You have to become obsessed with it, because a performer will close 30, 40, 50, 60%. And people that are new, that are struggling to make the kind of money they want, they're often closing 10, 15, 20, 25%. So it's a combination of dials of working harder, but then working smarter by saying, you know what, if I just get better at saying the right things, if I get better at harnessing the right energy, if I learn the doper lines per type of client avatar situation so I can connect with them, if I learn how to level up my overcoming objection game, then I don't have to work harder. Technically, I could work less and even make a lot more money. You guys get me on this?
Yeah, sir.
So the question is, this week, what do you have to do to elevate your game? And what do you need to work on? If your dials are low and you're not happy with your income, the number one goal you should have this week, I would challenge you to double your dials, so that you can actually have twice the conversations, which gives you twice the opportunity to practice, because you don't get what you want, you get what you practice. So have more practice, which means you got to talk to more humans. You have to double those dials to be able to do that. Then when you feel too stretched that you're working so hard, eventually you're going to say, man, I'm going to break. I either have to get accustomed to just working harder, or I'm finally going to have the courage to ask for the credit card without being afraid. Because I got news for you. When you talk about money and you don't feel well inside, the client says the energy is kind of weird on the phone. And it's weird. I got this gut instinct that I've heard before in the past that tries to warn me from bad decisions. And right now my gut is giving me really weird vibes in this conversation. Everything was going great until you mentioned money. And now everything's weird. All they're doing is responding to the fact that you can't talk about money in a healthy space. You get nervous. Or you talk to someone who makes 10 times more money than you, and you get nervous. Who's ever done that before? Because we play this hierarchy game, especially men, that if someone makes more money than me, then hierarchically I'm inferior. It's actually not true. It's a mental game, and you have to best that game. You have to kick the trash out of that. You got to talk to someone that makes $5 million a year with zero intimidation when you're making $50,000 a year, and throw it out the window and just not care. That's a skill. You don't fake it. You just have to know this. They got involved with our organization for a reason. And the clients that I need to be partnering with are the more successful human beings, not the less successful human beings. And the people I want in my investors club are the more accredited people that have more money. And those people don't get in front of me when you're scared and nervous to talk to them, because you're too busy playing a personal problem game of, oh, this person makes more money than me, I'm nervous. And then you jack up the juju, you jack up the energy, and all of a sudden the person's like, nah, this is too small for me. But what they're really saying is, you're too small for me. Because you're not representing Kris Krohn's abundance right now. You're representing your own smallness. And it's not my job to discern the difference between the two. So I'm just going to take the energy that I feel I'm going to respond to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure.
So to get better at this game, brother, you got to stop pitching $497 all day long like your life depends on it.
Right.
Where's the $5,000 closes?
Gotta get
Where's
more
the
of those.
sets? Where's the sets, bro? Where's the bigger stuff? You didn't come over here to make little chump change, right?
No, it didn't.
So guess what you need to do? You got to get more comfortable. What do you have to get more comfortable with?
I have to get more comfortable with it's asking for that sale, the
Yeah.
$5,000 sale, and feel like so confident about it. I mean,
How many of you have that one going on a little bit where sometimes you get nervous when it comes right down to the moment of asking for the money? Yeah. Will you please do me a favor when you get to that spot? Will you please not represent yourself? Will you please represent me? Will you please ask the way that I would ask? Will you please play with them the way that I would play with them? Because we're in this game together and I want you to be your best you, but please do me a favor. When it comes time to asking the money and you're getting nervous inside, in that moment, anytime I've ever gotten a text from any one of you that says, hey, Krohn, I got someone who's sitting on the fence here, it's for the Works program, they're just not sure. Dude, I bust out a 60-second video and I say, Jamal, what's up? Kris Krohn here. Listen, I've been jamming with Nick on the team, and I gotta tell you, if I were in your situation, this is exactly what I would do. In fact, if I had the time machine back to the beginning and start with no mentors and no resources, this is the program. If you're serious about real estate and you want 3 forms of getting in the game, this is it. I hope to see you at my next event. Click. Be that way when you ask for the money. Be that way. So you gotta ask yourself, what game do you gotta level up? If you don't like your money, you gotta level up your dials. Then when you get tired of like, Kris, double the dials, bro. 160, that's a lot of work. That's where you gotta say, good, I guess instead of paining myself working that hard, I guess I have to get more confident when I ask for the money. I guess I gotta be more confident than when we actually talk about money. I guess I need to learn, I gotta self-assess. Am I confident in how I actually pitch the product, or do I do it with nervousness? Dude, you gotta like do some role playing with your team leader. You gotta double down on just saying, you have to self-aware where you're weak, and then don't be weak. And you can tell yourself the lie that mere mortals tell themselves all day long. With time, it'll correct itself. Did you know that time heals nothing? A decision does. More time won't make you better at this job. The moment you actually face the part that you're weak at, and then you actually go to the mat on it and practice the crap out of it and get expert advice till you can do it better, that's the moment that everything gets better. It's not, well, I should just practice it wrong 980 more times over the next 4 months. You won't get better. How you get better is by recognizing where you're weak, and then you ask for help. Please do that. Men don't like to ask for help. Ask for help, ask for directions. And then practice it and get feedback, and practice it and get feedback. And what I want you to do this week is I want you to get with your team lead,
okay.
And I want you to practice asking for the sale.
All right.
And I don't want you to stop practicing. Who's your team lead?
Josh.
Josh, I do not want this guy to stop role playing until he can do it as good as you do it with that same level of confidence. Because you're pitching programs that are too low when there's option closes, when there's higher opportunities. There are some of you that kick over deals like, hey, Kris, we're talking to this person about the 5K program. They have 150 grand in the bank. And I'm like, I love you. I'm going to throat punch you so hard right now. Why are you ripping off this human being from me giving him something better? Please, the moment you feel weak, just represent me and not yourself. Trust me, it's going to be a good thing. And that's how we get better. There's so many examples here of people that you can channel their energy. How would Marianne do it? How would Jason Lawson do it? How would Nick Bernadette do it? How would they do it? And I'm going to get better at this game. And whatever you're weak at, role play the snot out of it and make your greatest weakness your biggest strength. Find something to optimize. Because that relationship that needs 95 minutes a day, it deserves 110 from you. So can be in abundance. And guess what your job here needs? Don't make it a job. You're an entrepreneur that deserves to earn multiple 6 figures so you can be in the game of investing and growing your personal financial life side by side with this. When Jason was my division leader, when I was in college at BYU, I was terrified of him, but man, I respected him. I loved learning so much from him. And every time I got better at the game of sales, every time I got better at my own personal investing, as my income leveled up in my job, I took that money, I put it into real estate, and I leveled up my whole life. My confidence grew through the roof. I forced myself to grow every day. Raise your hand if you know what you need to work on this week to become better. Whatever that is, I challenge you. Don't let time solve it. I want you to freaking crack it open. I want you to stare at it. I want you to ask for help. In fact, do me a favor. Will you promise me that you will ask for help from a knowledgeable person that has already kicked this one's trash, that gets this one? Will you ask for their help and then role play it with them until they can give you honest feedback that says, that was 5 times better? When you get that response, you're ready to go back in the game and start practicing at a better level, because time won't heal it. But doing things right. Remember, practice never made perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. So figure out how to do it perfect. Practice that. You guys will level up your game. I appreciate you guys. Crush it this week. Back to you, Marianne. Love you guys.